and president of the Endowment for Middle East Truth, or EMET. And it is my profound pleasure to welcome you here today for this extremely important and timely seminar, which is another installment of EMET's Miriam and Sheldon G. Adelson Policy Seminar Series on Capitol Hill. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that today's seminar is held in memory of Maureen Anstey, and a group of Maureen's friends have gotten together to make a donation to EMET in memory of Maureen. Maureen had been a long-standing member of EMET's board of directors. She had been the quintessential lady, a quiet, humble woman, but in her own understated and elegant way, she was able to move the world a little bit in the right direction, and I think that's all any of us in EMET try to do. She was a devoted Zionist and believed strongly in EMET's mission. Being a part of EMET's board of directors was extremely important to her. So important that despite the fact that Maureen had fallen the night of our dinner on June 14th and was in extreme pain, the very first thing that Maureen did publicly was to go out and to attend our annual dinner that June. She was a wonderful friend and a devoted Zionist and great Canadian and American, and just a wonderful, wonderful woman. So if we could just take one moment of silence in memory of our dear friend, Maureen Anstey. We'd all appreciate that. On July 14th of this year, 3 Arab-Israeli men left the Temple Mount, or Haram al-Sharif in Arabic, armed with pistols and rifles, and killed 2 Israeli-Palestinian policemen. Because of this, the Israeli government closed the Temple Mount for a few days to inspect it and found a huge weapons stash. And therefore decided to erect metal detectors and cameras on the Temple Mount. Because of this, there was large-scale rioting throughout the streets of East Jerusalem. The rumor immediately spread that the Jews are defying the Al-Aqsa Mosque with their filthy feet. This did not happen in a vacuum. In fact, in September of 1928, that same rumor had been spread, which led to the murders of the Jewish community in Hebron. And as you all recall, or most of you recall, in 2000, when Prime Minister Ariel Sharon decided to walk on the Temple Mount, even though he had cleared it before with the WAQ, the Islamic Religious Authority, there was wide-scale rioting that led to the Second Intifada. All of this incitement to hate and to kill has only increased since the signing of the Oslo Accords on September 13, 1993. In fact, the Palestinian Authority has used every means possible, the textbooks, cartoons and newspapers, editorials in newspapers, television shows, summer camps, to indoctrinate these poor little Palestinian children that the most valuable thing that they could do with their life and with their lives is to have them go to an early death and to make their lives, their bodies into human bombs, or be killed because they're using knives or rifles or automobiles to kill Jews. We are very, very fortunate today to have a person who, I don't know how he's had the stomach for this, but he's made this his life work. Itamar Marcus is the founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch. He's one of the foremost authorities on Palestinian ideology and policy in the world. Itamar was appointed by the Israeli government in 1999 to represent Israel in negotiations with the PA on incitement. He's presented analyses of Palestinian ideologies in academic, cultural, and government frameworks, including hearings, lectures, and briefings to members of the U.S. Congress and Senate, the Canadian, British, French, German, Norwegian, Swiss, Dutch, and Australian parliaments, and members of the European Union Parliament. He's lectured at conferences and at universities throughout the world and to senior security officials worldwide. He's given analyses on CNN, Fox, BBC, and a full range of world TV media. Beyond that, just today, I will be taking Itamar with me to the White House, and we are going to be talking to Victoria Coates, who has recently been appointed to help handle the Middle East conflict as part of her portfolio. So without further ado, it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce you to my dear friend and colleague, Itamar Marcus.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to EMET for inviting me. I'm glad that Victoria Coates is going to handle the Middle East conflict. It's finally about time somebody does. I mean, and when she gets a handle on it, let her tell us exactly how she's handling it. Okay, Palestinian Media Watch was founded in 1996. That was a few years after the signing of the Oslo Accords. And we wanted to know what was happening in the internal Palestinian world. We knew what they were saying in English to negotiators, what they were saying in English to the media. We wanted to know what was happening internally. And to this end, we're looking at Palestinian society really holistically. We study sports pages, cultural pages, crossword puzzles, everything that's happening from the official media to see which direction the leadership is directing the people and the messaging. The messaging of the leadership is basically every structure that they control to get a sense. And what we've learned is there are two different worlds. There's the Arabic language world, which includes activities, schools, school activities, and there's the English language world, and very often there's no resemblance between the two. Now, today, I think I chose this topic because we just had another spurt of terror. It happened so quickly. And the entire Palestinian population gets behind it. It happened in October 2015 and then lasted through 2016. It happened the year before. It seems like almost nothing happens and then boom, people are running to go out. And they have the support. And my question is, how are good people transferred into terrorists? And I'm focusing here on good people because I'm working with the assumption that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians are good people. Every society has fringe. So the question is, how do you turn good people into people who are willing to support terrorists? Be a terrorist and support terrorists. Because we find an overwhelming majority of Palestinians do support what they call the armed conflict against Israel, which means terror. So the question is, how do you transform? What is the messaging from the leadership that gets mainstream people willing to either participate in terror or actually go and or to support terror? Now, and that's what I'm going to show you today. What I think is the anatomy of terror. There are two periods we have to think about. There's the period, there's the messaging of before the attack, and there's the messaging post-attack. And I want to divide this into two categories. In the messaging before the attack, the Palestinian Authority has to instill a motivation amongst children and adults. And how is this done? It's done through hatred, fear, Israel's threatening, Jews are threatening, and a religious duty. So let's go through this first and get a sense of how a Palestinian child, Palestinian adult may see the world through this messaging that's coming from his leaders. And the first messages of hate are delegitimization of Israel as a nation, but also delegitimization of all Jews as individuals. I'm going to just show you of every one of these categories. We have hundreds of examples that we see, and these are representative, and I'm going to give you just a number of examples, or possibly one example for each one. Now, delegitimization of Israel as a state. I want to give you one example. The PA claims in English to want that the conflict is about territory, and they want the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and Jerusalem. What they tell their own people is something very different. This is the message you're going to see in this program that was on official Palestinian TV. Official Palestinian TV is owned and controlled completely by the Palestinian Authority. This message has appeared there for children and adults hundreds of times, and I want to show you one striking example of what is the conflict about regarding territory.
هاي تل الربيع شوف تم تسميتها تل الربيع بعد احتلال يافا تصدق شوف كانت يافا هون بس صارت تل الربيع.
يعني لك يا مروان، رحت على يافا وشفتها وانبسطت فيها. بس أصدقائي بحكي لكم يعني يافا أكيد مش يافا وبس، يافا وحيفا وعكا والناصرة وكل المدن الفلسطينية اللي احتلت بال 48 رح ترجع لنا بيوم أصدقائي الأطفال.
The first message and the first principle is that all of Israel is in occupation. It's not just the West Bank. And like I say, this is a constant message on this program for children. It's a constant message for adults. The occupied cities in 1948. So this is the first thing. Now, it continues all the time. We had a radio program just a few months ago, Lod Haifa, not the land of the Jews. That was the message in this song, and it's constant. It's a constant message. That's the first thing. Delegitimization of Israel as a state. However, the PA goes beyond that, and there's delegitimization of Jews as individuals. And I want to show you one example from most important, that same children's program you just saw the example from is called Beit Biyut in Arabic, the best home, and this is a message we've heard a number of times on this program.
لا أخاف البندقية فجموعكم وهم وقطعان غبية. القدس أرضي، القدس أرضي، القدس أيامي وأحلامي الندية. يا من قتلتم أنبياء الله الأتقياء، يا من تربيتم على سفك الدماء. يا بني صهيون يا شر البرية، يا قرود همجية.
Sons of Zion, the most evil amongst creation. The Jews are at the lowest of the totem pole, the very lowest of God's creations. Barbaric monkeys, it continues wretched pigs. It's based on Islamic tradition, which doesn't have to be interpreted to apply to Jews today. But the PA teaches, okay, this is the third child in recent years that we've heard on PA TV, on children's programs, reciting this identical poem. Jews are wretched, barbaric monkeys and wretched pigs, and the most evil amongst creation. Okay, so this is the attack, and again, this is an example of an ongoing messaging that comes. Now, these are two delegitimization messages. In order to get people, though, to actually fight and to actually kill and to actually, what I call, transform from a good person into a terrorist, hating them is not enough. If Jews are monkeys and pigs, okay, that doesn't bother me. So they're monkeys and pigs. But if the Jews are a threat, if the Jews endanger every Palestinian, if Jews endanger all of humanity, if they endanger the whole Arab world, then fighting Jews actually becomes the right thing to do. A good person will do it. And this is the component that I want to focus on a little bit longer, because that is the focus of PA messaging about Jews. It's not that we're just evil or that we're just monkeys and pigs. It's that we actually are the epitome of threat to humanity. And they use this using Islamic sources. Just like that little girl was talking about monkeys and pigs, so too here we see they're using Islamic sources. And I'm going to start with this message of the Satan. Now the Satan, in certain Islamic traditions, is the evil force in the world. Everything evil happening in the world comes from Satan. There are a number of different Satans. We won't go into all that, but just the point is you should know when you hear the word Satan used here, it's not just a slur. It's meaning that the Jews are behind all evil in the world. Now, who is saying this? This is Mahmoud al-Abbas. He is appointed by Mahmoud Abbas to be head of the Sharia courts, head of the Islamic courts. He was also appointed to be his personal advisor on religion. He is, without a doubt, the most important religious figure in the Palestinian Authority. Listen to how he defines the conflict. And I'll pause for a moment. Israel presumes, Washington presumes that the conflict is about territory, and therefore if you adjust the territory, it could work. Listen to what this top religious figure in the PA, very close to Abbas, listen to what he says the conflict is about. Nothing to do with territory. Listen.
هذا الصراع المحتدم ها هنا في فلسطين بيننا وبين هذا الاحتلال المجرم صورة أخرى من صور الصراع التاريخي بين الحق والباطل، بين الخير والشر. على مدى التاريخ كان هناك صراع بين الخير والشر. الخير يمثله الأنبياء وأتباع الأنبياء، والشر يمثله الأبالسة وأتباع الأبالسة، الشياطين وأتباع الشياطين. ونحن ها هنا بدعا من الأمر، هو صراع بين حقيقتين، حقيقة الخير وحقيقة الشر، بين مشروعين، مشروع الرحمن ومشروع الشيطان.
The conflict in Israel today didn't start in 1948. It didn't even start at the beginning of Zionism. It started with Jews throughout history representing evil, falsehood, and the Satan. Evil, falsehood, and Satan throughout history, and they've been in conflict with Islam throughout history, and then Israel is therefore Satan's project. The problem with Israel has nothing to do with the land that we're on. It has to do with the fact that we are a Jewish state and the Jews represent Satan. This is the message coming from the most important religious figure in the Palestinian Authority. Now, I want to show you how they give this message across to children in two different age categories. This is the same important program on Palestinian TV for children. Listen to how she is getting this message across.
وقد علمت في صغري أن حروبنا كانت لأجل المسجد الأقصى وأن عدونا صهيون شيطان له ذيل.
Our enemy Zion is Satan with a tail. The Jews, Israel, Zion is Satan with a tail. This is the sixth child we've heard in recent years reciting this poem. Look at the ages of these children. Look at these children, all young, sweet, innocent kids, and they're all reciting the same poem that Zion is Satan with a tail. The youngest age category that we've heard this from is last year in Ramadan, the second time that it was broadcast for Palestinians, once on Fatah television, once on Palestinian Authority television. Here the message of Satan is actually going for preschoolers, because it's a cartoon, very young kids. This was an entire month. This was a program that ran the entire month of Ramadan, every single day, more installments. The theme was the beginning of Islam, who's fighting against Muhammad and Islam. And it turns out that it's Satan who's fighting, but Satan can't fight by himself. So Satan is employing the Jews to fight against Muhammad. And I want to show you just a small section from this program.
لقد هزمنا يا لعين أمام جندي من جنود الله. إنه الرعب هو من هزم اليهود وأخرجهم من ديارهم في خزي وعار.
قد بنيت خطتي على نار الحقد والكراهية التي تملأ قلوب اليهود نحو محمد وأتباعه.
I built my plan, says Satan, on the hate and loathing that the Jews have for Muhammad. How is the Satan going to succeed against Muhammad? Because the Jews are with him. That's the message coming through. So imagine preschoolers looking at this ugly Satan figure for a month, every day on TV. The Satan's in cahoot with the Jews. They're trying to destroy the prophet of their religion. And then later, these kids were supposed to have any possibility of making peace with the Jew. Anyway, this is the message coming through. So we're seeing it at different age category. We're seeing it as an ideology from the top religious figure, and we're seeing how this is passed on to the next generation in the Palestinian Authority. Now, that's the theory. The theory is the Jews through Satan, or the Satan through Jews, are responsible for everything wrong in the world, and I want to show you how this then plays out in reality, how the Palestinian Authority then looks at all of history as it's happening through this prism. Everything is seen through this prism of the Jews are responsible. I'll give you some examples. So here you have, for example, we've had the Middle East in civil wars now for 5-6 years. Shia fighting the Sunni. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. So here you have them blowing each other up. But who's behind them? Who's actually behind the whole thing? Now, where did this appear? 3 times. Fatah posted this on their website last year. 3 times this identical message. They wanted to make sure that everybody got this message. And remember, the theme here is in danger. Israel is threatening. Again, if we want people to fight, then you have to feel threatened. So the first message here is Israel is endangering Muslims around the world. Here we have Israel endangers every Palestinian child. Listen to this on this same children's program, most important children's program.
الاحتلال عم بيستهدف الأطفال بكل مكان. لازم نكون حذرين كتير بهاي الفترة. هدول هم وحوش أصدقائي الأطفال، بيحاولوا يقتلوا الناس من غير أسباب وهم على أرضهم ماشيين. هاي اسمها وحشية يا أصدقائي. كونوا حذرين منيح على طول. الأصدقاء كلهم تحت 15، الأطفال كلهم تحت سن 18. الأطفال تحت سن 15 يا ريت لما تكونوا طالعين ترافقوا أمكم أو أبوكم.
Don't go out unless your parent accompanies you. This message to kids to be fearful of this dangerous Israeli who's going to just shoot them for walking down the street. And by the way, the counter side to this is while they're telling Palestinian children that Israelis are going to shoot them at every opportunity, they're hiding information from them about how many children have been treated in Israeli hospitals, how many Palestinians have been treated, how many children had free heart surgery in Israeli hospitals, how many Syrians have been helped by Israel. All of this is missing. It doesn't appear in the Palestine. How many trucks are going into Gaza every day, tons and tons of food, all missing. So what happens is it's a uniform message. They hide from their people the messages of everything good that Israel's doing, and they give them this distorted message. So the two sides complement. And again, I feel fear. These people, these Israelis, are really, really dangerous, of course. That's the message a child will get from it. Now, it goes beyond, like I said, the Middle East. Following the Paris attack, 2015, 129 people killed. What did Fatah post? ISIS is pulling the trigger, but who's actually directing it? It's Benjamin Netanyahu. Again, evil in the world is happening, but it's actually the Jews who are behind it. And here I want to show you how we see, occasionally there are polls taken, and we see how tragically the Palestinian population accepts this message after the Charlie Hebdo terror attack, and they were radical Muslims, radical Islamists who did this. So here was the article in the paper that represented this ideology on January 15th, that Israel was behind it, and then a few days later, a poll was published, and listen to this. 84% of Palestinians thought that the operation was suspicious. Israel may be behind it. Only 8.7% believed that the murder of French citizens in Paris was a result of Islamic extremism in Europe. So what we're seeing here, and this is the critical point, and we see it here and in many other polls, and I'll show you some more later, this hate messaging is being listened to. People sometimes say, oh, it's incitement, stop the incitement, the problem is gone. No, this is not incitement, this is indoctrination to a way to see the world, and this worldview says that Jews or Israel are responsible for everything that happens wrong in the world, and therefore it's easy for them to assume and accept that what happened in France, where there were no Israelis and no Jews involved, it's easy for 84% of the population because they've been hearing this since they were watching cartoons on Palestinian television. Now, I'm going to show you another expression of this, and this is important because of this person's position. This is a person who had a regular weekly program on Palestinian TV, and I want to show you what he says first, and then I'll show you what happened to him last year.
لن تنعم البشرية ما دام اليهود يعيثون في الأرض فسادا. لو أن سمكة تقاتلت مع سمكة في البحر لأيقنت أن وراءها اليهود.
If a fish in the sea fights another, the Jews are behind it. Now, I remember the first time I heard this, I thought it was, it's just a silly exaggeration. And the more I think about it, the more that I understand the Satan concept, and the more that I see how Palestinians really attribute everything that's wrong in the world to Israelis or Jews, I think he actually believes this. I think he's thinking that every fight, even in nature, if there's a fight, it's Satan who's behind it, and the Jews are with Satan, so that therefore this is actually a reality that he's talking about. Now, he has these vicious anti-Semitic ideology. He's expressed them so many times on Palestinian television. So how did Mahmoud Abbas respond to this kind of an ideology? Last year, he was appointed by Mahmoud Abbas to be dean of a whole educational program called the Al-Aqsa Institutes. So, I'm sorry, the Al-Azhar Institutes. So, it's not just, so first he's doing it on PATV, and now he's the head of an educational program. So it's not that if you do that, we're going to put you on the side. He's actually being kicked upstairs, and these old speeches that he's talked about have actually been rebroadcast now a number of times. Now, if Jews are responsible for everything wrong in the world, then why not be responsible for the theft of Kim Kardashian's diamonds? Now, it seems absurd, but I want to show you that is exactly, and the first time we saw this we laughed, and again, the more I realized that it's not just by itself, this has to be seen within this whole context. I want to show you what happened here. Kim Kardashian was robbed in France, in Paris. They stole her diamonds, they held her at gunpoint, they tied her up. It was a traumatic experience for her. And then a number of months later, they caught a team of 17 thieves who were responsible. And then there was an article in the Israeli newspaper Yediot Ahronot about the capture of the thieves. The two heads of the group of thieves were Algerians, meaning they were Muslims. The article tells all the details and then it says, involved in this was also her driver and her brother, who may have been Jews. That's what it said. Now, I want to show you, that's what it said in the newspaper. Now, this person over here who's speaking is Fayez Abbas. He is the Palestinian Authority expert on Israeli affairs, PATV. And every morning he goes through the Israeli newspaper, he picks out certain articles, and then he tells Palestinians what's happening in Israel. I want to show you how he distorts the world, and this is a good example of his constant distorting the world. and then he puts it into Israeli names. So I told you what the article said. 17 people, Muslim leaders, 2 Jews might have been involved. This is the way he tells it to Palestinians.
اعتقال يهود قاموا بسرقة المطربة كيم كارداشيان. تبين انهم يهود. هيك مكتوب، مش انا اللي انهم سراقين، هيك مكتوب في دوت احرونوت، مش مني انا. مكتوب يهود. هن سراقين يعني ليش؟ بسرقوا الاراضي هون كمان لا؟ ولكن لم يتم العثور على خاتم الخطوبة الذي يساوي $5 مليون. ما لقوها. اليهود خبوها وحولوه لشيء ثاني.
So this, now, again, the first time it seems humorous, but I want everybody to understand this within the context of everything else we're seeing, the same way we're responsible for Charlie Hebdo, and the same way we're, everything, the fish fights the fish, even Kim Kardashian, because that's the idea, that's what they're brought up on. That's what they're brought up on. So that's the message coming through from the Palestinian Authority leadership to their people, wherever there's something wrong in the world. Now, how did the Palestinian Authority get the Palestinians to get involved in terror in the last few weeks, involved in terror for Jerusalem? They said that the Al-Aqsa Mosque is in danger. And again, I'm pointing out, it's in danger. What we're doing is self-defense. We have a right to, because the Israelis threaten. I want to show you this. Let's look at the words. We had the Minister of Religious Affairs of the PA that Israel has plans to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and establish the alleged temple in its place. And of course, this is a total ridiculous lie. We've heard it over and over again. We've heard it from Mahmoud Abbas himself a few years ago. And as we heard it from Hajj Amin al-Husseini in 1929 in order to get people to riot. So this is a constant message. But we heard it just last week, 2 weeks ago. Israel wants to destroy the mosque. So then anyone who goes out and fights Israeli, he is defending the mosque. And that's what we heard in the other articles. Young Palestinians are giving a message that Jerusalem is a Palestinian temple. Harming it means opening the gate. We are proudly defending the Arabness of Jerusalem. It's self-defense. And here comes the justification I talked in the beginning about. How do you get good people to get involved in terror? Well, it's self-defense. I'm defending the mosque. I'm defending the children who are being shot. Excuse me, who are being shot by Israel. I'm defending. I am under threat by these Jews who are in cahoots with Satan, who are responsible for everything that's happening in the world. So accordingly, and this gets us to the next stage. Here comes the operative stage. Because they are inflicting this evil in the world everywhere, killing of Jews is actually to save humanity. And I want to show you just a couple of examples of this because the language here is very important. So the first person you can hear, this is the Mufti of the Palestinian Authority. Highest religious title, highest religious figure, also an appointment of Mahmoud Abbas. And he's speaking at a Fatah celebration. Now, it's important that it's Fatah because what you can hear in the introduction by the moderator is critical. We've been noticing in recent years that Fatah has adopted Hamas ideology as to what the essence of the conflict is. I'm showing it to you in words, and I'm going to show it to you. They're going to say it explicitly. Listen to what the moderator says when he introduces the Mufti.
لأن حربنا مع أبناء القردة والخنازير هي حرب دينية عقائدية تنتهي فتح.
A war with descendants of apes and pigs. First of all, that same slur, again, we hear it all the time. He doesn't want to say a war with the Jews, a war with descendants of apes and pigs. They're subhuman, that's the message, but it's a war of religion and faith. It's not about land. It's a war of religion and faith. That's the message coming from Fatah. Now, Hamas was founded on this ideology. Hamas, in its charter, if you read Hamas' charter from 1988, it's a completely religious document, and they attacked the PLO, who presented the conflict at that point as a nationalistic conflict. And Hamas attacked them. It's not nationalism, it's religion and faith. And here we have Fatah, just a couple of years ago, saying that that's what the conflict is about. It's religion and faith. And all we have to do is look at the Middle East today and see wars of religion and faith that are going on 1,400 years. And that's why this is so dangerous. Wars of religion and faith don't end because they are being driven by what God wants, driven by what Allah wants. And they haven't ended 1,400 years. That's internal Muslim wars. And that's what's being said here now. So Hamas said it first, and Fatah has adopted that ideology. And listen, then the Mufti comes, and listen to what the Mufti said.
لا تقوم الساعة حتى تقاتل اليهود فيختبئ اليهودي وراء الحجر أو الشجر فينادي الحجر أو الشجر يا مسلم يا عبد الله هذا يهودي ورائي تعال فاقتله.
Okay, he quotes the hadith that says the hour of resurrection won't come until Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. Now, what's he saying? He's saying that the redemption of humanity, the resurrection, is conditioned on the extermination of Jews. Just get a sense of how. And he's applying this to Israel today because he started, which I didn't play the video, but he started 47 years of Fatah revolution, the modern revolution, and then he applies this hadith. The Fatah revolution is not about stopping Israel, and it's not about Zionism. That's what he's saying. The Mufti is saying the Fatah revolution, you think it's about Israel, you think it's about Zionism, it's not. It's coming to fulfill this source in Islam which says that you have to bring the genocide of Jews, and he says it explicitly, he says that's the jihad, Palestine, we talk about the jihad, the continuation of jihad. So the war that Fatah is fighting against Israel, at a Fatah celebration, is not about land. It's not about Zionism. It's about Jews. And the goal, the end game, is extermination of Jews. This is coming from top religious figure. Last year on official Palestinian TV, at one of the Friday sermons, this was said explicitly again.
اللهم عليك بأعدائك أعداء الدين اللهم احصهم عددا واقتلهم بددا ولا تغادر منهم أحدا أرنا فيهم يا ربنا يوما أسودا اللهم عليك باليهود الظالمين ومن يعاونهم من الملحدين. Punish the wicked Jews, count them, their numbers to the last one, kill them to the last one. Now, aside from just the call for extermination here, I want to point out two critical words here. Punish the wicked. Punish the wicked. The Jews are going to be exterminated not arbitrarily and not because of some cosmic, but because we are wicked and we deserve it. It's punished. It's our punishment. It's a retribution. We deserve it. And that's critical because that fits into this whole ideology. The Jews are this evil force. They're this dangerous force. Therefore, they have to be punished. And what's the punishment? The punishment is to cleanse the word of them, count them to the last one, kill them. And this is PA. This is not Hamas. This is the PA Fatah ideology. I want to show you how children's programs encourage kids in the same way from a very young age. They're all bring up, usually without the theology, but they're taught to glorify both killing as well as dying. And I want to show you a whole series of things from the same Best Home television program, all of them 2017. We're talking about all new videos. This is just earlier this year.
اليوم يا ضفتنا يا غزتنا على الصوت اليوم يا ديرتنا لاجعين نفات الفوت زي ما قلعناهم من غزة وجديروت زي ما ذبحناهم في شوارع بيروت لأجلك يا أبو عمار لعيونك احنا نموت بعد الظلام نهار يسقط ورقة توت بكرة نجيب الثار قائدهم بتابوت احنا الفتح اعصار للثورة دم ناقوت.
برافو محمد شكرا.
Bravo, cheering. Look at the age of the young children sitting around in the studio audience. And it's for you, Yasser Arafat, we shall die. Our blood is food for the revolution. Their leader will be carried in a cup. And it's vengeance. They deserve it. It's vengeance. We have a right to fight them. This is what children are getting. At this age, I'll give you another example. This is the 7th time we've heard this from a child in recent years. The 7th time we've heard this identical poem.
فلسطيني أنا اسمي فلسطيني وآلاف من الأسرى وآلاف المساجين تنادي الأمة الكبرى وتهتف في الملايين طلع حرب تدق الظلم تزرق روح صهيوني ونرفع في سماء الكون أعلاما فلسطيني فلسطيني فلسطيني.
برافو.
Look at the applause, the bravo. War that will smash the oppressor, destroy the Zionist soul, and that will lead to the raising of the banner in the sky, Palestinian. Destroy the Zionist soul. This is again repeatedly done by children on Palestinian television. Also this year, getting into the whole martyrdom issue, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But the point is, even at this young age, children are being taught to eventually see themselves as martyrs. Look at this girl on official PAT.
بانتفاضة 2000 كانوا القادة مجتمعين أعلنها شيخ فلسطين بالأسرى بنحفظ العهود ونبادل الأسرى بجنود فلسطيني باسم الرب ضرب الشهداء علا وعلا ضحوا بالغالي للأغلى حتى شوف الغاصب ولا شهداء وأسرحنا ضحينا يا بلادي لن نوفي الوعد يا بلادي لن نوفي الوعد صمود أسرانا واستشهاد أبطالنا رمزين بنحفروا على القلب وعلى كف اليد.
Two messages again. Shoot, shoot in the name of God. It's very religious. Shoot in the name of God, the path of martyrs above all. So again, it's double messaging. Kill them and be willing to kill. Now, one of the great tragedies of all this hate messaging is it's not just, as I said, it's catering to their self-defense mechanism or the instinctive need for self-defense when you're threatened, but it's also being done for God. We saw that before, but even the children. Shoot in the name of God. Now, why is this such a problem? Because if you're shooting for nationalism, if you're shooting for territory, you're shooting for if someone tells you to shoot, you can think about it. But if God's telling you to shoot, then there's nothing to question. How can you question what God tells you? You're not allowed to question what God tells you. And that's the great tragedy of all of this. We hear the religious leaders saying, the conflict is against Satan. How can you question that? That's the religious leader. We hear the other religious leaders saying, you're killing Jews, you're fighting Israel because you're leading to their extermination. These are religious leaders. This is in the name of God. And here you have it explicitly by this girl, shoot in the name of God. Shoot in the name of God. Therefore, there's nothing to question here. I'm gonna question what God said. That might seem wrong to me. So you're getting all of these messages, each one adding more to what I said, the anatomy of terror, adding more to the willingness to turn, like I said, even good people. A good person wants to serve God. A good person wants to defend his children who are being shot everywhere. So even good people will then feel they're doing something righteous when they go out and either be terrorists or support terror. Now, why is this so tragic? That they're packaging all of this in the name of God, because look how significant religion is to Palestinians. Now this itself isn't tragic if they had good love thy neighbor messages. But look at this. Palestinians are asked last year, in general, is religion an important part of your life? 95.6% said yes. 95%, actually more in the West Bank than in Gaza. 95%. So you've got a completely religious society, and the religious figures are telling them, you have an obligation to kill Jews. And you're doing it for a good reason, because they're wicked and you're punishing them and you're going to save humanity. So these are the messages that are coming. I talk about the creation of a terrorist. I want to show you now, we saw the success last year of this messaging amongst children. In last year's terror wave, that started in October 2015, went through 2016, which 44 Israelis were killed, in which Taylor Force was killed, and other Americans as well. The average age of the terrorists, 50% were teenagers. 50% were teenagers, and 10% were under the age of 15. 10%. So very, very young kids who were seeing these films and seeing these videos and getting this indoctrination, they were joining in this thing. It was the youngest age we've ever had of people involved in terror. And when I say terrorists of 15, and I don't mean people who throw stones. I mean people like the terrorist who went into the home of Daphne Meir, mother of 6 children, and 15-year-old boy, and in front of her children stabbed her to death. In spite of her screaming, in spite of the children screaming, how can a 15-year-old do that? How can a 15-year-old stab a dead animal in the street, and no less a live person? Well, if you understand what the messaging they've been receiving all along, you understand that they actually, these are such terrible people. He's really been blinded. He's been poisoned. In 2007, I had a press conference here in the Senate with Hillary Clinton. And we released our report on Palestinian school books. And her words at the time were, the Palestinians are profoundly poisoning the minds of their children. That's what she said, profoundly. And that is, not only was it true then, but the results of that poisoning is what we saw last year on the streets of Israel. When you had 15-year-olds, 19-year-olds, or young 20-year-olds, they were all brought up on that poisoning that she was referring to in 2007. She pointed it out, they're being poisoned, and those kids are victims as well. A person who's poisoned is a victim, and that's the critical thing here. The Palestinian child isn't to blame. He didn't have any choice. If he's getting it from kindergarten, first grade, he didn't have any choice. They were poisoned, as Hillary Clinton said, and of course everybody suffers. They suffer, and of course Israel suffers, and we have a population now that fears Israel, etc. Now I want to show you another interesting success here. We see the success in the action. I want to show you the ideological success. Now what I'm going to show you in a moment is a quote from a children's magazine. It's called Zazifuna. It's a Palestinian Authority funded magazine. And what they do is they accept submissions from youth. Now, a 15-year-old girl gave a submission. And she wrote that she had a dream, and in the dream she saw 4 doors. And behind 3 of the doors were heroic Muslims from history. And she had a conversation with each of them, a very nice conversation. So one of them was Saladin, who conquered Jerusalem, and the others were also great historical figures, all Muslims, except for one. Who was the 4th door? And this is what she writes. I turned to the next door, and there Hitler awaited me. I said, you're the one who killed the Jews. And Hitler said, I killed them so you would all know they're a nation which spreads destruction all over the world. What I ask of you is to be resilient and patient concerning the suffering that Palestine is experiencing at their hand. And the girl says to Hitler, thanks for the advice. This girl concluded from her, she knew that Hitler killed the Jews, but she concluded from her education that Hitler was doing a service for humanity. Look what he said, they're a nation which spreads destruction all over the world. And therefore Hitler was doing a service to humanity. And that's what this girl thought. I don't blame that 15-year-old Palestinian girl. I blame the educators. I blame the Palestinian TV. I blame Palestinian Authority, which is responsible for this education, because they have poisoned, as Hillary Clinton said, poisoned the mind of this young child to think that extermination of Jews that Hitler tried to do is actually something positive. And if you understand that the Mufti says the hour of resurrection won't come until Muslims exterminate the Jews, well then of course Hitler was actually part of this plan. So I don't blame this girl, but I definitely blame the religious leaders and the educators who are poisoning the minds of the kids. So this is the mindset of a person who goes out to commit terror. He's doing it in self-defense. He's doing it to save humanity. Now, in addition, there's a whole other component, and this is, what about after the attack? You could get arrested, you could go to jail, you may be killed. How does the Palestinian Authority act on Palestinians so that they don't fear, or they'll lessen the fear of being killed, lessen the fear of being arrested? And I'll show you what they do. They have a whole series of things. First of all is honor. They also promise them heavenly rewards, which will show you. They give them monetary rewards, and I'm going to give you examples of all these things, and this will really complete the picture. There's the motivation before the attack, and there's the motivation not to even worry about what's going to happen after the attack. So immediately when a Palestinian goes on a terror attack, if it's successful and he's hiding, we don't know his name, so there's no honoring, there's no public honoring. But if he is killed in the attack, we get things like this. Now this is, every time a terrorist is killed attacking Israel, he gets a major poster. This is on Fatah I'm talking about here. Hamas certainly does it as well, but this is Fatah's Facebook page. And listen to the language here, because it's important. Fatah movement escorts its martyr, his name, to his wedding. Fatah escorts its heroic martyr to his wedding. Why is this? Because a terrorist who dies attacking Israel is a shaheed. A shaheed is it's not the equivalent of a martyr, but it's a religious martyr who's getting rewarded for Allah. The word shaheed comes from the word testimony, witness. So Allah is witness that you died for Him. It's turning this into a religious act, which is what they're telling them all along. You died for Allah by attacking Israelis, and now you're a martyr, and therefore you're getting, among other rewards, you're marrying 72 virgins in paradise. And I want to show you how serious they take this. It doesn't say here we're accompanying him to his funeral. This is a funeral announcement. No, we're not accompanying him to his funeral. We're accompanying him to his wedding. It's literally a part of the belief. And I'll show you his comments all the time. Here's another example. Escorts its martyr son to the wedding, the man who carried out the stabbing operation. We have another example, heroic martyr who watered the soil of Palestine with his blood. The Fatah movement escorts its heroic martyr to his wedding. So he's heroic. His picture is all over the place. You're getting the social honor. Honor is a very important thing in Palestinian society and many societies, some more than others, but especially in Palestinian society, you're being honored. So a person sees everyone who becomes a martyr, a shaheed, his face is everywhere. It's on Facebook, people talk about him. So the first thing is the honor, and the second thing is you're being told that you're not losing if you're killed, because look what you're gaining. You're gaining these rewards, you're going to a wedding, and we've had many, many cases of terrorists who've gone on terror attacks. They left, some of them in the days of the Intifada, 2000, 2005, they left farewell videos saying, I'm going to be greeted by the 72 maidens of paradise. They've said that. Just a few months ago, we had a grandmother talking, describing she had a conversation with her grandson. And she said, well, I can't wait for your wedding. And he said, I'm going to go to my wedding soon. And she said, when? He says, well, I want to marry the 70. He said 70, and it's another tradition, instead of 72. And then he went out and became, and she was interviewed because he actually was a terrorist who became a shaheed, who became a martyr. So it's a real belief, and we see it here. Fatah. So again, what I'm trying to show though is in terms of the PA, they're telling the people, don't worry about dying. Don't worry about dying, because look what's waiting for you. You're going to a great wedding in paradise, and here's the honor. So you're getting honor, and these are just more examples of other examples. Everybody gets the honor over and over again. They see it everywhere. They see the posters, and people want honor. Even the deaths of teenagers. Even the deaths of teenagers is twisted upside down by the Palestinian Authority. Instead of mourning the teenagers, just the opposite. We're honoring them. We're honoring them, and this is one example of. In 2016, there were 16 12th grade students who went on terror attacks and were killed by Israel in their terror attacks. 16. So later on in the year, on the day of matriculation exam results, so every 12th grader was getting the results of the matriculation exams, the Palestinian Authority published this, WAFA, the official news agency, they published this statement relating to those 16. And this is what they said. The day of the publication of high school matriculation exam, the families of the martyrs, the shaheeds, and their relatives find themselves proud of the martyrdom. By the way, there's a play on words here because the matriculation and martyrdom both have the same word. Again, it's a testimony. The matriculation is testimony to your graduation, and the shaheed is a testimony. So in any case, it's a play on words. So the families and the relatives find themselves proud of the martyrdom that their children achieved with the Creator. 16 students succeeded. For death as a martyr is the path to excellence and greatness, and the path to those who know how to reach the great victory. Talk about turning the world on its head. 12th graders have no life, they're not going to graduate high school, not going to graduate college, not going to get married, not have a family, not have children, and what has the PA said? No, that was the path to excellence and great victory. That was the real victory. They did it right away. You have to work hard, you have to do all these things to get victory. No, they did it the fast way. That's the message from official PA. This is their official news agency. Again, it's trying to say don't worry about dying, don't worry about terror, because even if you die, look, that's the fast track to victory. This is the message from the Palestinian nation. Now, so you've got that immediate honor right after the fact, and then there's permanent honor all over the PA, all over the Palestinian Authority. There are these monuments of honor to terrorists. And I'll just show you a couple of examples. This was June 15th, just a month and a half ago. The Palestinian Authority decided to name in Jenin the Khaled Mazel Square. Now, what's so striking about this is not even a recent event. Who was Khaled Mazel? He was the person who planned the terror attack, which ended up in the murdering of all these children, 22 children who were killed when they were held as hostage, and he directed the attack. So that's the person who they decided to honor just a month ago. Here we have in Nablus, City Square, named after someone responsible for a double suicide bombing that killed 23. Now here's a very interesting example. This is something that happened just in May of this year. We saw that the Palestinian Authority was naming a center for Dalal Mughrabi. Now, who is Dalal Mughrabi? She was the terrorist who led the worst attack in Israel's history. She hijacked a bus with other terrorists. This was in 1978. They called it the Coastal Road Massacre. 12 children were killed, 25 adults were killed, 37 people in all. Because this was the worst attack in history, she has more things than anyone else named after her, and it's a constant. I'll show you another example later. In any case, a few months ago, a center in a West Bank city decided to name a center the Dalal Mughrabi Center. It was for young girls. Again, role modeling here. These are young girls. And look what we saw. We saw that Norway was funding it. Here was their logo. The United Nations was funding this. Palestinian Authority was funding. This was a joint sponsorship of a building where youth are going to be participating, named after a mass murderer of children and adults. So we released this story. Now, what's significant here is not just the international reaction, how fast the world reacted. Because the world is reacting very, very quickly when we're releasing these stories. Now, the very afternoon, after we released this story, Norwegian Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, said, I deplore this decision in the strongest possible terms, will not accept the use of Norwegian aid funding for such purposes. We've asked that the logo of the Norwegian representation be removed and the funding that was allocated be repaid. Later that day, the UN responded the same way. Assistant Secretary General for Development condemned it. 2 days later, the UN Secretary General himself condemned it. and asked that the logo be removed. And then a week later, we hadn't realized when we released the story, Denmark was also involved. And his language is very striking. I'm outraged. WATC is the Palestinian organization which claims to work for human rights, has not only glorified a terrorist, but also abused the trust of generous people like the Danish one. Denmark and Danish kroners will under no circumstances be used for anything that glorifies, and he also asked that the money be repaid. So what's happening is the world is finally recognizing how terrible this is and responding immediately to these reports. The point is, though, I'm trying to say, is that it's still going on today. Still going on today. They're still naming it. If you go through the Palestinian areas, you'll find monuments to terrorists who killed civilians all over the place. All over the place. So that, again, think of it from the mind of the Palestinian. One, they're getting the immediate honor, but there are also these infrastructures of honor all over the place. And then I need to mention, there are 28 schools in the Palestinian Authority named after terrorists, 3 named after Nazi collaborators. I mentioned before Dalal Mughrabi, who killed the 12 children, who had the center named for her. These are the 12 children who were killed in the bus attack, in addition to 25 adults. And there are 3 schools. 3 schools named for Dalal Mughrabi. This is the bus that she hijacked. And there are 3 schools named for her. Why is this significant? Listen to these girls. Listen to these girls who are in a Dalal Mughrabi school. Palestinian TV interviewed them. What does it mean to be in a school named after Dalal Mughrabi?
احنا متواجدين حاليا بمدرسة دلال المغربي لحتى نتعرف وإياكم على أصل حكاية هالشهيدة وهالمناضلة الفلسطينية.
دلال المغربي قائدة عظيمة. هذه المناضلة ربما ماتت وصعدت روحها إلى السماء، ولكن ما زالت أمهاتنا تنجب ألف دلال وما زالت روحها ثرية فينا. دلال المغربي أعطتنا الكثير، وأنا شخصيا أفتخر بأنني أنتمي إلى مدرسة دلال المغربي.
وأمنية حياتي أن أصل للدرجة التي توصلت إليها الشهيدة المناضلة دلال المغربي.
Life's ambition is to reach the level of this person who killed 38 people. So that's what happens in these schools, and that's the messaging that comes on. Now, in addition to the permanent structures, and in addition to the immediate honor, you also have constant one-time events, like, talk about Dalal Mughrabi. This is a story that we just released yesterday, July 31st, just this week, another summer camp named for Dalal Mughrabi by Fatah. And like I'm saying, because she was responsible for the killing of the largest number of Israelis, she has the most number of places named after her. And of course, this is a very powerful message, especially in summer camps to children and youth and young girls. They're all getting this message, like I say, from a very young age. Last year, we also had a basketball tournament named the Dalal Mughrabi Cup. And this was happening while there were young teenage girls involved in the terror of 2016. They decided to role model again for them. We also had the person who sparked the entire terror campaign, the terror wave last year. The knife campaign was a person named Muhammad Khalabi. He stabbed 2 people to death in the old city of Jerusalem, and that was then the model. And this is important. Who is sponsoring this ping pong tournament named for Muhammad Khalabi? It's Jibril Rajoub. Now, why is that important? Jibril Rajoub is head of sports in the Palestinian Authority. He's head of youth affairs. He's head of the Football Association. And he also, aside from Marwan Barghouti, he got the highest number of votes at the last Fatah conference. So he is the most important. He's really next on line after Mahmoud Abbas. He's next on line. So he is right up here involved in this terror glorification. Now I'll show you one more example of a sporting event named after terrorists. This is one of the most shocking ones we've ever seen, because this was named after the youngest terrorist in the entire last terror campaign. This is named after Ahmed Ben Nasra. Ahmed Nasra was a 13-year-old boy who took a knife from his house, and he saw an Israeli 13-year-old boy riding home from school in his bicycle. He knocked the Israeli boy off his bicycle and stabbed him in the neck with a knife. The Israeli boy was in a coma for 2 weeks. He almost died. In the end, he survived. 6 weeks later, Palestinian. What should the Palestinian Authority have done? They should have told all their 13-year-olds, stay in school, get an education, don't stab. They did just the opposite. They named a football tournament, the Ahmed Ben Nasra football tournament. And what was it? Many schools in Ramallah. This was a school tournament. Ministry of Education of the Palestinian Authority was involved in this. And if you look at the ages of the kids, they're about the same age. They're about the same 13. So 13-year-old kills a 13-year-old, and other 13-year-olds are told by the Ministry of Education this was heroic. And if you want your name in a cup, those boys are thinking, if I want my name in a cup, and it's going to be a tournament named after me, all I have to do is kill an Israeli. I don't have to be good in football, I don't have to be good in school, I just have to kill an Israeli or attack an Israeli, and I can be a Palestinian hero. That's the message coming through here to these kids at the Ahmed Manasseh. Now, the final rewards, in addition to the honor and the glory and the rewards in paradise, are the financial rewards. And this is very significant because today already, just now, the Senate committee passed the Taylor Force Act. Now, this is a story that what's shocking to us, we first reported the story in 2011. I was recently going through we reported this in May 2011. In July 2011, I already spoke here in Congress and met with congressmen and told them that PA was paying salaries to terrorists. Look how many years it's taken. Sometimes things take a long time. But in any case, I want to show you what's going on with this, just to give you the exact numbers. Anyone who's arrested by Israel for what the Palestinians define as resisting the occupation starts getting a salary. Now, if a person is arrested for stealing an Israeli car, they don't get this, or any criminal activity or robbery. No, it's only if you're involved in terrorism. It can be anything from throwing a stone or murder. Everybody gets this. Now, you start off with about $400 a month for 3 years, and the longer the prisoner is in jail, the more it goes up. It ends, if they're in jail for 30 years, they're getting $3,400 a month. Now, that is, $3,400 is about, for civil servants, make about $1,000 a month. Laborers make about half of that. So you're talking about a massive salary. You're talking about 3 times the civil servant. You're talking about 4 times a laborer. And that's how high. So the Palestinian Authority now is claiming this is social welfare. It has nothing to do with social. I want to show you the social welfare. There is a component of social welfare. Look, a person who's getting 12,000 shekel a month, what's he getting per child? $14 a month. That's the social welfare component. The $3,400 is the reward for terror. And I've said this many times. We are honoring these people. We're not going to stop paying them. They deserve it. They've sacrificed for Palestine. That's the message coming through. There is a tiny, tiny component of social welfare, but the massive payments have nothing to do with social welfare. These are payments of rewards for terror. In 2017, we just found this on their budget, and we just released this story. It's $158 million is allocated for 2017 by the Palestinian Authority, which doesn't have enough money to pay electric bills and doesn't have enough money for its people. It's spending this to reward terror. There's 6,300 terrorists in prison right now, all receiving these salaries. And like I say, it's every period. People like Abdullah Barghouti. Abdullah Barghouti built bombs for terrorists from Hamas. Blew up cafeteria of Hebrew University. A number of restaurants were blown up. Cafe Moment. Altogether, 67 people were murdered by the bombs built by Abdullah Barghouti. He's already received close to $200,000. So that should he ever be released in a prisoner exchange, he is coming out a wealthy person. And many have already. Many murderers who've been released for all sorts of reasons come out as wealthy people. They drive the fancy cars, everybody notices, and that's a reward that happens for terror. And if a person is killed, he knows his family is being taken care of. And these are the payments they get immediately, $1,700, the family of the terrorist. And then this is the payment for life, $400 per life, with additions for each wife. Each wife gets $114, and each child gets another $57, and this is for life. Now, altogether, because it's a lifetime payment, there are 26,800 families of martyrs getting this kind of payment. It comes to almost $200 million a year. Between the two of them, you're talking about $450 million. Taylor Force Act says if these payments continue, the Palestinian Authority will not receive, I don't know the exact language that passed today, but in general won't be receiving any money from the United States government anymore, because it is seen as, it is definitely a reward for terror. So that's the payment. So to summarize, there are 2 categories of indoctrination that change good people into terrorists. First is hatred and the feeling of being in danger. And remember, again, in nature, any animal that feels threatened will fight. Any animal that feels in danger, it's going to the most fundamental instinct that every human and every animal has to survive. If you feel threatened, you're going to fight. And that's what the PA is playing on with all those examples that I showed you, and 1,000 more that you can see on our website. Palestinians, you are in danger because of Israel. And, of course, there's the Islamic responsibility. These people are connected with Satan. These people are endangering the world. The end of time, we need the extermination of Jews. So there's the motivation. That's before the attack. And then what are the benefits? After the attack, there's instant heroism, instant honor, monetary rewards, and promises of heavenly rewards. So you sum total it, the PA is covering all the bases here. What's critical about, and what I want you to understand as I end the presentation, is that when people talk about this problem, they unfortunately just use one word, incitement. And as you see, that is a misnomer. That doesn't in any way point out the scope of the problem, the sophistication of the problem, the indoctrination, and the essence of the problem, which is so much deeper. It's really a brainwashing of an entire population to believe that when they kill Israelis, Israelis are being killed because they deserve it. No matter what they do, whether they're a baby, whether they're a woman, whether they're a child, whether they've done nothing. And that's a great tragedy, and that's what we are facing in the Palestinian Authority. And we're hoping that bills like the Taylor Force bill and other actions that are being taken by European countries to limit the funding to the PA. The funding isn't the critical point. The point is that the PA needs the funding. They need the funding to survive. And we're hoping that this financial pressure will make the Palestinian Authority realize that they have to change not just this one issue of the salaries of terrorists, but we're trying to get Congress and other European parliaments on board that this entire messaging has to change. Don't fund them until they change the messaging. If you fund them, then you're responsible for the wars that we're going to have. You're responsible for these kids' lives and their poisoning. And it's our hope that eventually the international community will recognize how awful, how horrific this messaging from the PA is, so that they can somehow impose, don't know how exactly, but somehow impose a change. Financial pressure, political pressure, impose a change so that Palestinian children will eventually be brought up to see Israelis as we are, just want to be good neighbors, that hopefully we'll have peace in some future generation. Thank you. Now, open up to questions. Yes, please.
I want to ask you regarding your comment about Fatah, Hamas, and the Mahdi are getting in sync here. But my question is really about the West Bank and what happens after Abbas leaves the scene. Which of these groups is really going to be the power broker who decides who's going to replace Abbas?
Okay, so first of all, there's a misconception that the West Bank is a stronghold of Fatah and the PA, and that Gaza is a stronghold of Hamas. The last time that the Palestinian Authority had democratic elections in 2006, Hamas won both in Gaza and the West Bank. Both in Gaza, and they had the prime minister and they had all the ministries because they won. They had more than 50% of the seats in the parliament. And that was before all of these years of hate education, these extra 10 years of hate education. So, and that was even before the PA has turned this into such a religious war. So what's happening is when the PA is adopting this Hamas ideology, that it's a religious war. If we were to have peace tomorrow, if we were to have a peace treaty tomorrow and the Palestinian Authority would have democratic elections, there is no doubt that in 4 years or in 8 years or one of these elections, Hamas would win. Like I said, they won the last election. And that's the great fear, and that's the great danger that's going on here. Even if Abbas were to change his whole ideology tomorrow and say, okay, I'm going to sign a peace treaty, I'll give in to some of Israel's demands, I don't need the refugees. Even if you were to do that, we're going to end up having Hamas. People think you can have I've heard this language so many times that it's shocking to me. They say there's a window of opportunity now with Abbas. And I say, well, if it's only a window, it's no opportunity. Because that window, after Abbas and after the next election, is going to turn into Hamas. So the question is not what happens immediately after. It means that the point is Hamas is powerful. By the way, related to that, there's talk all the time about Palestinian Authority giving credit for what's called security cooperation with Israel. Yeah. Security cooperation that the Palestinian Authority does with Israel is first and foremost to preserve Mahmoud Abbas, because Hamas would have long ago have taken over in the West Bank as well, as they did in Gaza. So Hamas is very strong there, ideologically they're very strong. You look at the election results. For example, Birzeit University recent election, the Hamas Student Council won. So I think what will happen if there were a democracy there, what would happen is like we have in the United States. 4 years, 8 years, one party, 4 years, 8 years, next party. The difference is that when you have in America 4 years, 8 years, and then you go back and forth, the democracy continues. In the PA, when you have Hamas even winning once, well, that's the end of democracy. They're not going to give up the reins of power that they have. They are a terrorist, they're an open terrorist organization. So you ask what's going to happen? We will definitely get Hamas one way or another if the Palestinian Authority was in control.
What do you think should be a plan B, or what should one do if, heavens forbid, what you're making now in terms of pressures, which is very good, by the way, all the way you research, in the countries that support financially the Palestinian Authority, if this will not work, as it hasn't worked any foreign assistance in many countries, and given the political scenario that you're painting about Hamas being very powerful, okay, given that reality, what are the chances? Number one, that it will produce results and a change of attitude and a change of all this. And number two, if it doesn't produce the results, what is the alternative? What can one do?
Okay. Let me go back. I want to go back to the beginning of the Palestinian Authority. I want to go back to 1996. 1996 is very important. This is after 30 years of Israeli rule, administration of West Bank and Gaza. And the most important Palestinian pollster was taking polls all the time. The Palestinian Authority was new, and he asked them lots of questions. One of the questions that he was asking repeatedly was, how do you rate the Palestinian Authority in democracy and human rights? And then for purposes of comparison, he said, how do you rate France, United States, and Israel in democracy? Now listen to this first poll results. In 1996, after, again, 30 years of what the PA calls this abusive occupation, terrible occupation, 50% of Palestinians gave their own leaders, the Palestinian Authority, a positive rating in democracy and human rights. France was better, 55%. United States, 65% of Palestinians, United States is positive. How about Israel? And this is given all the false, fake news, let's call it, all the years, this is the most counterintuitive thing. 78% of Palestinians gave Israel a positive rating in democracy and human rights. In other words, 30 years of direct contact with Palestinians, with Israelis, Palestinians thought Israel was the best in the world in democracy and human rights. Now, the same poll was taken the next year, and this proves that it was true, and went from 78% to 77%. 77% thought Israel was positive. The next year it went down to 75%. Again, 3 years in a row in that range already. And again, the person who's doing this is Khalid Shkaki. He's not a friend of Israel. His brother was Fathi Shkaki, who founded the Islamic Jihad movement, who Israel killed. So he's a good pollster, though. He's an honest pollster. He did the poll. The next year, Israel was down to 65%. In other words, the less contact that Israel had with the Palestinians, direct contact, and the more that Palestinians were seeing Israelis through the filter of the Palestinian Authority, the less they respected them, because they were getting these messages. And basically, tragically, what's happened is that since then, the longer the PA has been messaging with this poisoning and starting terror, Israel has to fight the terror. Today, if they ask that question, he hasn't asked the question, but if it would be asked, I'm sure it would be down in the areas of close to zero. 10, 15, 20% would give Israel a positive rating. So now, you ask the question, what's the solution? And why am I telling you this? People-to-people contact, when Palestinians knew Israelis, they didn't want to go and kill Israelis. There was so little terror. There was terror, but in those days it was the fringe, and that's what I'm pointing out. In those days it was the fringe. And in every society you have fringe, and Israel fought the fringe relatively successfully. We had small number of terror attacks every year, small number of people killed. It was the Palestinian Authority who then took the step. What we have to do, since we know that Palestinians aren't born hating Israel, they once, not so long ago, thought Israel was the best in the world in democracy and rights. That's our goal. We have to get back to that situation. We have to get back to a situation. How does that happen? It happens through peace education. It happens through people-to-people contact. And one of the things that we're recommending to governments is that when they give aid to the Palestinian Authority, a massive percentage of it should be taken out of the hands of the Palestinian Authority and put into specifically people-to-people peace-building activities. The Palestinian Authority prohibits peace-building activities. They call it normalization. They have a special committee to fight normalization. Normal is peace. They fight peace. They have a committee to fight peace with Israel. the world should impose it. How do they impose it? Condition 90% of the funding, that 10% is going to these projects run by the international community, that joint sports teams, joint basketball teams, joint music academies, Palestinians. There was people to people. When Palestinians knew Israelis, like I said, they thought we were the best in the world in democracy and human rights. We just have to let them know us again, let them know the truth. And I think so that's the condition. That's the condition. To run and sign a peace treaty now, and of course the United States is very much looking for it to sign a peace treaty. It's meaningless. A signed peace treaty would be meaningless. Like I said, we'd have Hamas in a few years and then everything would be thrown out. And that is even assuming Abbas is sincere. And by everything we've seen, I don't think he's sincere at all. But even if he changed his mind one day and was sincere, we'd have Hamas. So we need peace education first, people-to-people contacts. Let Palestinians again appreciate Israel's humanity and democracy, and then we have someone to talk to. Yes, please.
It seems counterintuitive, but when we're talking about peace education, I can understand the solution of economics, because the solution of economics works. But it's kind of like you're saying, we know that there's scorpions, don't feel bad about scorpions. Scorpions do what scorpions do. They learn, what's going on. But to both have peace education and contact means that the exposure, the underbelly of Jews, the murderers are still murderers. Whether it's a Temple Mount, let's take away, it's really, I don't want to say, it sounds hopeless.
Well, let me tell you, there was right after the last Gaza war, the Paris Peace Center sponsored a football tournament, a day of football for Palestinian and Israeli kids together. Now, the article that appeared by France Press didn't go into details about it, but it interviewed some of the children. So they interviewed an Israeli boy afterward, and he said it was great to come back after all this time stuck during the war. He interviewed a Palestinian boy, an 11-year-old Palestinian boy named Kusai. And he said, it's great that we're playing together like this. I'm paraphrasing with the Israelis. He says, I hope that one day there will be peace and there will be no war. Now, what is critical here? He was 11 years old. The hate indoctrination, and by the way, the article starts, the day started with a lot of tension and suspicion on either side, but the sporting events through the day prevailed. And in other words, you had one day of sports to 11-year-olds, and they changed now. If that was 18-year-olds, it was too late, for sure. And if it was 16-year-olds, it was probably too late. But at 11-year-olds, you can still make the difference. I'd like to see this programming at the elementary school level. In other words, when kids have not yet been completely poisoned, have people, that's the only solution. Because if we don't have that, there is no chance of any peace process to work, to get a peace treaty, and if it does get a peace treaty, that peace treaty is meaningless. It's meaningless. The Palestinian population, a poll taken a few years ago by Palestinian Authority pollster, asked Palestinians if they recognize Israel's right to exist. So people who are older, who knew Israelis, who grew up before the Oslo Accords, 50% recognized Israel's right to exist. The younger generation, aged 18 to 25, 8% recognized Israel's right to exist. 92% said no. So that's why we have to start with the youth, with the young, have them let them meet Israelis face to face, and through that, in spite of the PA, build peace from the people up.
I want to thank you because I knew some of this was going on, but not to the degree, and it's very scary. With children who are indoctrinated, preschool children, having been a teacher, and the indoctrination is there. It's in their guts. It's in their soul. I understand that you're saying with this 11-year-old it worked, but how do we stop it even earlier? And how it just seems so hard to stop.
Judy, thank you. That's an excellent question, and I think everybody in this room is feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. I actually really agree with Itamar's approach, and I feel that we have got to start on another issue that we've been working on a lot in EMET, which is the anti-Semitism on college campuses. We know America loves free speech, and the antidote to bad speech and hate speech is not to abolish speech, but good speech. Now, the Taylor Force Act, which just cleared the committee, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today, does not stop all funding to the PA, but it holds in escrow the amount of money that is used for the Martyrs Fund, and it's going to actually make sure that there are no laws like this. My idea, if there's still people that didn't have to return to work right away on the Hill, is to take that money that is used in escrow and to try to have good children's programming beamed into a Sesame Street programming that uses our technology to try to teach these children a sense of hope to become doctors and lawyers or artists or writers or photographers, but something with their lives, and to teach some tolerance. And I think that we cannot give up because the stakes are too high for these beautiful little Palestinian children that we saw, and for my children and grandchildren that live in Israel. But thank you very much.
Yes.
I was a college student at Hoover University in the 1970s. My professor was Yoshnet Arkabi, you may have heard of him, and he was the Arab advisor to Golda Meir. And he, among other things, in his textbook for us, had pages upon pages upon pages of children's books with images of Israel and images of Jews in them. This was in the 1970s, and this isn't new, unfortunately. So it isn't as if just this generation is being poisoned. This has been going on for a long time.
That, what you're describing, was not happening within the West Bank. It wasn't happening there. That was the Arab world in general, because the ones who were growing up in the West Bank and Gaza, they weren't getting the hatred, and that's why they knew Israelis face to face, and that's why they were able to reach those levels in those polls and really admire Israelis and democracy and human rights. Yes, please.
What do the Islamic scholars believe? What is their take on this interpretation of Islam? I mean, I know Islam recognizes Moses as a prophet. The whole idea that, that Jews are responsible for denying or holding back the redemption, that they're devils or Satans. How does that comport with mainstream Islamic thinking?
Okay, so first of all, Moses, by the way, you said they recognize Moses as a prophet, but they don't recognize him as a prophet of Judaism. He was a prophet who taught Islam. The Jews, according to the Islamic tradition, and you can see it's in the 5th chapter of the Quran, it talks about Muhammad calls the children of Israel and says, I'm coming to you not with a new message, but to correct your mistakes. Correct it, meaning Allah gave Moses Islam, the Jews distorted it, and we've heard many times it's one of the evils, one of the reasons they're being punished, they distorted his word. By the way, Jesus then was the next Muslim prophet, and he also taught Islam. And the Christians likewise. And the second part of that chapter, in chapter 5 of the Quran, it says, and then he came to the Christians, says, I'm coming just to correct your mistakes, not anything. When of course the majority rejected him, which is when he changed tactics and went on to fighting. But that's a whole other story. So first of all, it's a misnomer that they recognize Moses as a prophet. They don't. He's a Muslim prophet. That's the first thing. Now the second thing is I sort of hinted at it, and I said that this is the Palestinian twist on it. I'll give you an example. Monkeys and pigs. Jews, they teach their children, and you heard it from the moderator, the Jews are the descendants of the monkeys and the pigs. Now where does this come from? There are 3 places in the Quran where it says that Muhammad was angry at Jews, at people. One of the places it says because they violated the Sabbath. So therefore they're Jews, and he was angry and therefore they were turned into apes and pigs. Now, there are 2 traditions in Islam. One says those people who sinned became apes and pigs, they died out, and that's the end of the issue. The second tradition says that those apes and pigs reproduced, they gave birth to Jews, and today's Jews are the descendants of those apes and pigs. So there's no reason that Palestinian Authority has chosen that second interpretation. But they don't have to. In other words, again, they've chosen from Islam. There's an Islamic scholar in Italy named Abdullah Palaci. Now he is a great friend of Israel. He goes around the world, and I've spoken to him, and I've spoken to him at conferences where he talks, or he goes through all the sources in Islamic tradition which turn him into a supporter of Zionism. For example, there's a verse in the Quran that says, children of Israel will return to their land in one gathering. Now, he says, that's Zionism. In other words, I, as a Muslim, have to support, and I'm against the PA, and I'm against Hamas, we're trying to destroy Israel because it's been prophesied in the Quran. Now, what does the Hamas and the Palestinian Authority do with that source? We've heard it from the PA, but we heard it explicitly from Hamas about 1.5 years ago. A religious leader on TV said, we have to fight the Jews. As it says in the Quran, I will bring them back in one gathering so you can kill them. So he added his own interpretation, and of course when we subtitled it, we put the quotation marks so that it's clear, but when he said it, there were no quotation marks, and a Palestinian listening to him, oh, Allah said he's bringing the Jews here to one gathering. By the way, that's how Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood interpret the existence of Israel. How could it be Allah hates the Jews, he wants them destroyed, and he allows them to have a state in the middle of the whole Arab world? Why? Because since they all have to be exterminated as part of the end of time, they all have to be exterminated, Allah brought them back into one place so it's going to be easier to exterminate them. And again, I'm not saying this is necessarily mainstream, but that is a message that we've heard for many, many times. So it all comes together. So again, the answer is Islam can be interpreted to be supporting completely of Zionism. The problem here is the Palestinian Authority, who has chosen to interpret Islam in its way, which is one, Jews are descendants of monkeys and pigs, and at the end of time, the Jews have to be exterminated. Yes, please. Yes.
My name is Kami, but I'm from Pakistan originally, and what you explained here, it's not common only in Palestine, it's same thing about Pakistan. When I was in school, like 8 or 9 years old, I remember how my blood would kind of literally boil when I would hear these kind of stories against Jews. It took me more than 30 minutes to kind of undo that damage. So my question is that Israel has nothing to do with Muslim anger. I don't know how much you know, but Italy is a small country. Italians read more books per year than more than 1 billion Muslims do. They are living in dark ages. If they didn't have oil, they would be still living in tents. They are by nature very angry people. See, Pakistan would do anything for Masjid Aqsa, but what Arab call them, they call them Kullo Pakistani Harami. It means all Pakistanis are bastards. So my question is, isn't there any possibility to find some kind of solution of Palestine and then let these people, fight with each other? They are going to fight as long as this world exists, because that is in Islam's DNA. So, Islam means peace, surrender to God. But it's because we really don't believe in peace deep down. We believe in fight, we believe in, killing other people, we believe in killing ourselves. So that is the reason we call it a religion of peace. It's not really a religion of peace. And again, I don't know how much you know, but Muhammad's two grandsons, Hassan and Hussein, they were killed by one Muslim. So, this religion is built on hatred. It's built on anger. You can throw all Jews in Arab Sea, still anger is going to stay there. So, I mean, isn't this, we need to find some kind of solution so these people can fight with each other rather than...
Thank you very much for that. I'll go back to what I said before. They're amongst themselves, you were saying, they're learning to fight. But when they were, from 1967 to 1993, they lived with Israelis and they learned to live with Israelis. So that's what we have to go back to. In other words, we have to have them learn through people-to-people contact. And without that, there is no point in any process, and I thank you for your comments. Okay, thank you all very much. Anyone who wants to receive and isn't receiving Palestinian Media Watch updates, just write to